FanDuel Punch Out. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Nick Casso at The Inefficient 2. Taking a look at Sunday's slate here, all games 1 through 8 o'clock, and overall it's a pretty decent slate. I mean, we have a ton of enticing offensive options.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but there's certain players who are still very low, and at this point, you almost have to play them in all formats on FanDuel.
Yeah, definitely. And jumping right into catcher, if you're looking at top priced options, I think Brian McCann's kind of my favorite guy there out in Yankee Stadium. You're looking at Miguel Gonzalez, struggled against left-handers since 2014, a massive 1.58 home runs per nine. I think McCann's just kind of that guy who's, that big home run threat who's kind of up top there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to make sure that he plays because it's Sunday. He likes to take Sundays off, day games. So, other than that, I agree with you on pretty much all those points. He's just been so solid, Yankee Stadium against the righties, so kind of got to go with him. I also like Buster Posey on this matchup. Again, if he plays, because it is Sunday, so it's those days where catchers get the day off. But Ruby De La Rosa, I know he's pitched better this year, but overall, he's just really not a good pitcher.
Yeah, definitely. And I think on the opposite side of that game, Wellington Castillo, he had the day off yesterday, so I think that's kind of encouraging that he'll be in the lineup today. Matt Cain, I mean, he's been right around those numbers of just being awful for the last few years now, and 3.36 WOBA out to right-handers since 2014. I mean, Castillo's hit right-handed bats pretty well since coming into Chase Field, so I think in that ballpark with that over-under, I think he's in a pretty favorable spot.
Yeah, I was at the game where Matt Cain started against Colorado last week, and they ended up scoring 13 runs in 1 inning, and that was not good. So I've seen the worst of Matt Cain, and I agree with you with Wellington Castillo. They kind of traded for him as he just could hit lefties, and now they've kind of inserted him into the almost everyday role, and he's kind of excelled there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just feel like, at that price tag, I think him and McCann, I mean, obviously a lot of considering if they're in, are kind of my favorite options up there.
Absolutely. My favorite punt play for today at catcher would be Chris Ionetta. Facing the lefty, he has a 406 WOBA against him this year and 219 ISO. So Santiago isn't that good of he's decent lefty, but he's had a lot of struggles this year, especially keeping the ball in the park.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's a great call. I mean, Ionetta's always been that guy to kind of keep an eye on as a punt play, just because those southpaws he's hammered for pretty much his entire career.
And he's only 2,300, so he fits really nicely in a lot of lineups.
Yeah, I mean, if you're rolling out a Fernandez lineup or something, I strongly consider using him just to save some cash behind the dish there.
Absolutely.
Anyone else you're kind of looking at there?
Not really. There's only those couple guys.
Yeah. First base, I mean, first base is pretty loaded tonight. I mean, one, I think it's kind of, it might consider as far as GPPs go, which kind of stack I might be rolling out to kind of fit what first baseman I'm going in. Because, I mean, I do like Brandon Belt here. I do like Paul Goldschmidt. And obviously the way Ortiz is swinging the bat. So a lot of these guys I can really get behind in all formats. And I think one guy at a price tag is Lucas Duda and Edwin Encarnacion kind of coming as my top two. One, because they're just a little bit cheaper, 3,800, not that bad for both of them. You got Duda and Coors there, obviously Encarnacion against a lefty in Texas. Blue Jays bats starting to hit the ball a little bit better there, and their prices are pretty depreciated on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite would be Ortiz just because he's swinging the ball so well right now. 4,300 still pretty decent. It's not too high, and I just think he's really locked in against that young starter for Houston. I think he should be able to do a lot of damage. I agree with you, though. You look at Goldschmidt, he's in a great spot here as well, and also Duda playing in Coors. It's tough because I think a lot of people are going to be on Coors today. You look at Chatwood's ERA at home over 7, and you kind of want to just get as much exposure to that game as possible. But at the same time, if you're playing in GPPs, it's going to be tough because everyone else wants to do the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you look at that Red Sox game, I believe the over-under is now, I mean, it's 10.5 or 11. So it's, essentially it has the Vegas total of a Coors game. And, with those two offenses and the way they're rolling, I definitely don't mind Ortiz. if you're looking kind of somewhat cheaper, a guy who's kind of heating up is Adrian Gonzalez. I was kind of this 7.5 run total with these two pitchers on the hill. I'm looking towards the over, and I think this is kind of a sneaky Sunday night game to target as far as offense goes. And with Mike Leake and the way he's pitched this season, Gonzalez, I mean, certainly can get to him because Leake struggled with lefties.
Yeah, like you said, that's a good play right there with Gonzalez. He's slowly been coming back around. He started off strong, and then I think the end of April he just kind of disappeared a little bit, but he still hits pretty high in the order, third or fourth, and he's just one of those guys who's solid. If he isn't getting the home run, he's coming around getting averages and base hits here or there, knocking in runs. So he's definitely a pretty solid play.
Yeah, I mean, 2,600, not a bad price tag, and I think you can kind of differentiate yourself a little bit too there. Obviously, home run here so far in the series, hitting over 300 in the last 10 games. So, as you said, he started out strong and kind of tailed off a little bit, but he's coming back around to his usual ways.
What are your thoughts on Prince Fielder? He's kind of that low too.
Yeah, I mean, the only difference is, I mean, he's in a good spot because, Sanchez and at home, but he hasn't been coming around lately. So,
yeah, I'm just looking at the home park and Estrada going up against him, who really has a lot of fly ball issues. So, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's kind of like I need to see Prince Fielder start to get things going before I lock him in. But I mean, I can understand tossing him in the GPP. I mean, he's certainly worthy of that.
Yeah, I mean, he like you said, he's really been pretty poor. Was he still have only 2 home runs on the season? And I've actually preferred to play Mitch Moreland over him, even though he bats a little bit later in the order.
Yeah, I mean, a buck 87 Prince Fielder's average is down to, and yeah, two homers isn't really too appealing for me.
No.
But I mean, I understand the matchup in the ballpark there. I mean, that would kind of put him on the map. But if you want to take a GPP shot with him, I have no issue there. I mean, that price tag is not bad.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, you might as well just drop down to Gonzalez.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's starting to heat up. So, anyone else you kind of like in that mid-tier range?
Not really. Maybe just Justin Bohr, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think it's a spot to kind of really pay up at.
Mm-hmm.
Second base here, you got your top options. A guy like Jose Altuve carries a pretty big floor, and also, I mean, a reasonably high ceiling as well, especially against Sean O'Sullivan in Fenway Park there. I really like this Astros team a lot. Obviously, they all carry a kind of a steeper price tag. Altuve, the higher one there. But if I'm paying up, I think it's going to be for him.
No, I agree with you there. Sean O'Sullivan is absolutely atrocious. I know he got the win last time out, but he gave up 2 hits per inning basically on average, and that was against Oakland. And he's not a good pitcher over his career, and I don't even know why the Red Sox are still using him, but that's besides the point. And like you said, you have Altuve. He's shown a little bit more pop this year, so I definitely like him on FanDuel. And then I actually don't mind Odor. I think he's been coming around pretty well, and I just really like to target Estrada. He struggles a lot against lefties, and that park Globe Life is really gonna probably hurt him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, the one thing that you can kind of talk about spinning me down to is Neil Walker and Jason Kipnis, 35 and 3,400 for those two in good spots. Walker obviously going to get that Coors bump there against Chatwood, and then Kipnis hitting over 300 last 10 games there, and facing an average righty in Tyler Duffy. And so I think if you kind of want to sit in those mid-tier plays, I think those would be my 2 options.
Yeah, and I also like Joe Panic. He's only 3,200, back-to-back games with home runs the other day, and he's just been pretty solid. He's kind of similar to Gonzalez, where he started off strong, then kind of went away, and now he's kind of back. So I like him in this matchup, especially against De La Rosa, who really struggles over his career against lefties, despite being a little bit better this year.
Yeah, big time. I mean, this Arizona series has been huge for Panic. 6 RBIs in the 3 games, and as you mentioned, the 2 homers. So I definitely like him a lot. And I still think Derek Dietrich, I mean, worthy of a look, 3,300. His price tag kind of comes up a little bit, but I mean, he's been continuously paying that off, so I don't mind him either.
Yeah, I just think he's a little bit too high. I'd rather just drop down to a few players. What do you think about, what is it, Scoop?
Oh, Jonathan Scope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind him. I more of a tournament play for me just because of where he hits in the order, and you kind of need that big home run pop or something like that to get a big production out of him. But I do like I love the matchup. I love the Orioles today.
Yeah, I think they're one of the big stacks of the day. You have Fulmer, who really hasn't been good this season, and I just think they're going to go off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, pump plays. Cesar Hernandez is probably the only one I can take a look at. 2,100 just because he's hitting up in the top of the order against Rayleigh. Um, He'd probably be the only punt name I can think of down low.
Yeah, there's really not much out there.
Yeah. Third base here, and you have Nolan Arenado up top, but I think with Manny Machado facing Fulmer at 4,200 and that price difference, Manny Machado comes in as the top hot corner guy on my slate here.
Absolutely. And you look at Machado over his career, he's been a reverse splits kind of guy. He's really kind of dominated righties over his career and kind of struggled against lefties. And that's really something that you don't expect. But the casual player would just believe he's better against lefties. And that kind of gives you the advantage. And his price is really nice. I'm really staying away from Arenado. It's one of those days where you have DeGrom, who could potentially have a nice outing, but it's still Coors, so I'm not really sure, but I don't want to take that chance either.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you have Chris Bryant there up top, but he's going up against Garrett Cole. Josh Donaldson, I mean, obviously facing a lefty in Texas is appealing for him. I'm just going to continue to ride the hot hand of Machado. I just think it makes, I mean, way too much sense to just keep going with a guy who's continuously hit over 400 to start the season.
Yeah, absolutely. One other guy that I like a little bit further down would be Travis Shaw. He's really hit well at Fenway Park in the year plus he's been there, and I just think he's in a good matchup here. Like we've talked about, that Red Sox game is over under is pretty much right around Coors over under.
Yeah, 3,400 for what he's been producing lately is kind of a steal. I mean, if he can do anything from what he's done really this series and that Oakland series, you'll be sitting pretty.
Yeah, and 3,400 really is pretty low, and all the way that the pricing is, or some of these positions, you can fit them in and get a lot of high price guys as well.
Yeah, definitely. And one guy I'm taking a look at in GPPs is Jake Lamb, 3,100, hitting up top in the order there in Arizona, obviously against Matt Cain, who's been just as bad against lefties as he has against righties, and also allowing big home run numbers. So, I mean, Lamb offers some cheaper power from that left side, 1.59 ISO there. So, I think he's kind of an intriguing mid-tier GPP option if you're kind of going with that balanced lineup.
Yeah, I like Lamb a lot in this matchup. I also sort of like Duffy from this game, but he just hasn't really shown too much at the plate lately. So I like his price, but I think you got to stay away from him.
Yeah. And one guy, I mean, I'm kind of looking at is Danny Valencia, 2,400. If I want to maybe toss in one kind of deep GPP name, just because I mean Matt Moore, you're never going to know which one shows up. But I mean, since 2014, Matt Moore, I mean, he's allowed a 342 WOBA. Obviously, Tropicana, I mean, it's not friendly for hitters, but guys like Valencia and Chris Davis kind of pop up on my radar as far as being really different on today's slate.
Yeah, the only other two guys I had would be Louis Valbuena if he plays. I still think that Sean O'Sullivan is just pathetic, especially against lefties. I was looking at his numbers his last start and from last year, and he was allowing so much home runs to lefties. It was over, I think, 2 per 9, and it's just one of those matchups where if he's in, I know he's batted under 200 this year, but if he's in, I think he's in a good spot here. And I also like Maikel Franco. He's a little bit cheaper as well. You get Dan Straley, who's pitched well this year, but his overall career numbers, they're pretty poor. And he's kind of really exceeding what the expectations are. And his left on base number is pretty high. So once that comes back down, things are going to even out for him. And I think he's in a tough matchup here at Citizens Bank Park.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think this Phillies offense, I mean, kind of quietly underrated now. They're not quite that team you can just run any pitcher up against anymore.
No, absolutely. I mean, like you said, they got Cesar Hernandez and Andres Blanco, and they kind of they're one of those teams that will just slowly get hits here and there. And maybe get a few runs across, but they're not the best.
Yeah, I mean certainly. Yeah, I mean certainly not. You're jumping all over and stacking them today, but definitely some value in that 1 through 5 spot.
And on certain days they can kind of go off, but it's very far and few between.
Yeah. Looking at shortstop here, you do have some topper price option guys, and I think Carlos Correa out of that little core of Seager, Bogarts story, Correa comes in as my top option. Just look at the total of this game against Sean O'Sullivan in that ballpark. I don't see any other way around not using Correa for me.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of go to Bogarts as well. I just think he's been hitting pretty well. Korea, really, I've been a little nervous with him just because after the first week of the year, his power went away, but it looks like it's come back now. So that's a good sign. And Fenway Park is just a really good hitter's park. They don't really produce a lot, as many home runs as the average, but the overall runs scored there really is pretty high.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if you want to go a little bit lower, obviously I like Francisco Lindor, 3,500. Zach Cozart's kind of a guy. I think he's a little bit overpriced at 36, but obviously gets a lefty, Adam Morgan, kind of your average run of the mill lefty. Hitting leadoff for the Reds in that ballpark, it's not that bad of a play there. If you want to kind of spin down a little bit.
Yeah, I also like his Dribble Cabrera. He's just been pretty solid under the radar, but he's a GPP play for me. His price is nice, but like we said, he's kind of his batting order isn't the best. He sometimes hits like seventh, so it kind of hinders his productivity. But at cores, it should definitely give him a boost. And I was reading, I think last year, like a batter at cores who bats seventh is equivalent to someone who bats fifth in another park, just because on average they go through so many hitters and outs and whatnot before they end the inning.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I mean, we've kind of seen that so far. I mean, you look at the Arizona series, and it was a lot of that back end that did a lot of the damage. And I mean, it's always certainly an interesting stack to go with. I mean, especially against a team like the Rockies, and you look at some of the Cespedes, Duda, right? I mean, they haven't had the greatest series by any means, and I think that's kind of a way to be a little bit different, especially
Yeah,
starting it off with Neil Walker and kind of working your way down.
yeah, do the bottom end maybe and try to see if maybe even do start with Duda 4, 5, 6, 7. Does that work on FanDuel? Do
Yeah.
something like that. That'd be pretty interesting and kind of differentiate yourself because everyone's going to throw in lineups with Cespedes, Conforto, and Granderson.
Yeah, definitely. One name here, I mean, I've been joking around on the pods here lately with Tulowitzki, but 3 homers in the last 4 games. Um, I mean, I'm not quite saying he's going to be on his way back, but overall at 2,800 versus a lefty in Texas, I still think he's certainly playable in all formats. I think he's going to be very chalky, which will be good anyway.
Yeah, I think 2,800 is a perfect price for him. Like you said, he's kind of turned it on, but I'm still a little unsure what's going to happen with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's if can he continue that? I mean, that's the biggest thing, and putting it a consistent season for the rest of the year is probably not something I'm going to take a bet on. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, you look at him last year, and he came over from Colorado, and he hit well in Toronto, and now he had an awful month, and hopefully this turns it around, but we'll see. I think it's interesting to look at that trade. You had Tulowitzki, who really hasn't done much, and then you have Reyes, who's suspended, and the winner in all of this is Trevor Story.
Oh yeah, definitely. Any punt options you're taking a look at?
Freddie Galvis, only if he's in a good position, but that's really the same price as Tulowitzki, and I'd probably just go with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Moving on to outfield, and you got a lot of top options up there. Um, I'm not really justifying paying anyone. I think Mookie Betts is my favorite out of that top tier.
Yeah, the only other one I'd probably think about would be Cespedes, but that's probably if I'm doing a stack. His price is kind of high, and he really hasn't done well at cores so far, but he still has the potential there. I know he's struggling with his power right now, but I think that'll eventually come. And against Chatwood, I think this is a good matchup.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, Betts, I think he's kind of a guy I'm going to be working into a sock stack. I think it's just kind of inevitable at this point that you don't have at least a stock stack in the lineup with the way they're hitting the ball lately.
No, absolutely. The Sox are just on fire right now, and you kind of have to throw in a, stack or two of them.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's top to bottom, I mean, it just seems 1 through 9, they're all the way through. From that same game, but on the Houston side, George Springer at 3,900. Been really hitting the ball better of late. Obviously, 2 home runs in the series so far. And against Sean Sullivan at 3,900, I think he fits in perfectly, just in all formats. Not quite as expensive as some of those top options, but he carries that same upside.
Absolutely. One guy I wanted to point out too is I know he's been awful, but I think against Sean O'Sullivan, he might be able to do something. Is Carlos Gomez. So I wouldn't mind putting a flyer out on him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, you look at that Vegas total. I mean, I'm all over these two teams. It's really hard to get away from this one.
Oh, absolutely. One guy I do want to point out outside of this game would be Nelson Cruz. His price tag is just really low going up against Hector Santiago, who I know he struggled against Santiago in his career, but he should be able to do some damage against him.
Yeah, definitely. And Adam Jones, 2,700. Obviously starting to come around, and now you want to take advantage of that price tag until it starts to really come up into that mid 3.5 range where we usually see him. But overall, I mean, 185 ISO since 2014 off right-handed pitching. Obviously, we've talked about Fulmer and how we're expecting him to struggle big time. Jones, great option because it gives you salary relief, and he's still kind of one of those tier one type players.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the guy who I was kind of talking about early on in this podcast. The guy whose just price tag just hasn't really gone up too much. And at this point, 4 home runs in the past 5 games, you kind of have to play him. I don't think he's going to get a home run just because the probability is against him, but he's really looked locked in right now. And I think if you can throw him in a lineup and then you also throw in Nelson Cruz, you have a really good start of a lineup where they're not too expensive, but you also have those top tier guys.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think about Matt Holliday tonight against the lefty Alex Wood?
I mean, he's slowly gotten it back around again, but he's one of those guys who you kind of hate for DFS because he doesn't really strike out too many guys and he can give up a lot of hits, but some other times he could really shut people down. And it's just one of those things where I don't really know what to expect out of this game. And I think Holiday might have a good game. It's just one of those things I don't really want to take a chance on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of what Alex Wood shows up. I mean, if it's the bad one, this Cardinals team could be kind of a popular stack with some of those guys. And I still think on the other side, I mean, the Dodgers, kind of the value stack of the night if you're paying up for Jose Fernandez, just because of Leake's struggles with lefties throughout the years. You got Utley, Seager, Gonzalez, Turner. I mean, obviously Turner's a reverse splits guy, but Leake doesn't miss bats, all for a super cheap price tag.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be one of those nice if you're playing the all-day slate to have a GPP stack of those guys where you kind of are just in the middle of the pack in your tournament, and then you slowly start rising up the leaderboards.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of sit back in that Sunday night game and watch all those Dodgers with low ownership.
Yeah, you look at Leak, and he's been effective, but he's just overall he's not that good. And I think last year he really it over excelled what he was expected to do, and I think he's kind of back to the player that he should be right now.
Yeah, I mean, he heavily relies on his BABIP as far as being successful, which because he doesn't strike out a ton of guys and he just pitches the contact. And I mean, obviously, you look for him to enjoy a fairly friendly ballpark, but kind of at that time of the day, it can turn into power for hitters.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's Dodger Stadium. It's just it's middle of the road and kind of allowing runs and home runs. So it's not really a pitcher's park, even though a lot of people think it is. It's just kind of one of those parks that's pretty neutral. And at any time, a guy who's not striking anyone out could really have a bad outing.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel Punch Out. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.